Welcome back to the Maloney's Coasters YouTube channel, where today we're talking about DC Rivals Hypercoaster at Warner Brothers Movie World. It's often talked about as the best coaster in Australia, but how does it stack up against its major competitors, and where does it rank globally? We're going to find out today as we put DC Rivals Hypercoaster under the microscope. Sit back and relax, click that like and subscribe button, and let's talk about Warner Brothers Movie World's 2017 Mark Hypercoaster. Before we start, a big thank you to the Keith Monorail Army, including General Scaretastic YT. Click the join button down below to become a member today. Today's roller coaster under the microscope is DC Rivals Hypercoaster, a Mark Rides custom hypercoaster opened in 2017 at Warner Brothers Movie World on the Gold Coast, Australia. It stands 62 metres tall, 1,400 metres of track, a top speed of 115 kilometres an hour, and its signature element being a 40-metre tall non-inverting loop. Let's start off with the ride's theming. Now, this is an important issue when it comes to Movie World because this is a movie studio theme park. Theming plays a very big role in what Movie World does, particularly compared to another park like Dream World, which we talked about last week, where some rides are more themed than others. And in the case of DC Rivals, there's a few nice touches. The murals in the queue are pretty detailed. I like the multimedia use that gives it just a little bit of 3D layering and texture. You know, they look quite nice. These murals depict a bunch of DC superheroes fighting their traditional arch rivals. You've got a bunch of the classics there, Wonder Woman and the sorts, and then you've got the final mural in the station of Batman fighting the Joker. But overall, particularly inside the station, DC Rivals theming is minimal. Very minimal, as in those murals are literally the only aspects of theming at all in the entire ride. Now, I would definitely say that's disappointing. Not because it's necessarily essential for a coaster to be well themed for it to be good, but I just feel like Movie World should have their sights higher. Even if they do, and I've spoken plenty on this channel before about how I don't think that going down this Six Flags-ified path is the right choice for Movie World, but even if they are going to go down that path, there's nothing stopping you from putting some decent theming and effort into a coaster, even if it's just going to be a coaster. Like, I've seen some really good ones on my recent trip to China, like Blue Moon Speed and that sort of thing that looked really good within the station, but then the ride itself was pretty well unthemed. So I really don't feel like it should have been something difficult for them to do, and I guess it is one of the big letdowns of this ride and a few of the others at Movie World as well. It does follow this trend of kind of minimizing theming from Movie World, particularly on their thrill rides, and you know, that's slightly disappointing. Overall, the DC Rivals precinct, it's very plain. It doesn't look bad, but it doesn't look good either. It's there. I also am confused by the choice of ride theme and the choice of ride name. I think Movie World knew from the get-go that this was going to be their signature attraction. This was going to be their new biggest attraction. And I feel like when you're going to have a new big attraction, you need something catchy. You need something that's worthy of being a headliner. And I think maybe I've heard the rumors that they were originally going with the Suicide Squad. I don't think that was ever a really good choice. I know that there was movies coming out at that particular point in time, but even then, Suicide Squad's always kind of been like a B team when it comes to DC, and I don't think that it's something I would have gone with a headlining attraction. And I think at the end of the day, maybe they just got like a little bit too, they weren't quite sure what they were going to go with, and it didn't work out. DC Rivals is not a name. DC Rivals Hypercoaster is not a name that flows off the tongue particularly well. The theme is kind of convoluted, and like there's this vague theme, like this vague idea that it's themed around DC superheroes and their rivals. like, that's such a very, I guess vague is the wrong word because it's so hyper specific. It's so it's weird and niche. And I don't know why they went with that. I feel like theming it to the Joker would have been a better choice because that's what everyone refers to it as anyway. And Joker's a great theme for a coaster. That works just fine. I'm a very, very confused by the choice of name and theme for this coaster. But let's move on from the theming. Let's talk about the station, the train, and the operations. So last week when I was talking, or 2 weeks ago when I was talking about Steel Taipan, I described that station as basic but functional, and I said that it reminded me a lot of DC Rivals. And yeah, I would say the same thing here. Basic, nothing special in terms of appearance. It's purely functional. It's there to do a job. There's a couple of differences between the DC Rivals and Steel Taipan stations. The first one being that DC Rivals doesn't do the preloading that Steel Taipan does. It's literally just, one train's worth in the gates. I actually think that works kind of more neatly in their case. They still seem to manage to get everybody there and ready. They don't struggle to get everybody queued up behind the air gates in time, so that works perfectly fine for them. I would say the loose item storage is a bit of a problem. I could see what they were going for when they first designed these loose item storage boxes. They were supposed to kind of revolve so that when the ride's operating with two trains, it would spin around and you would not be able to access the person's loose items on the other train. But they have since stopped using that feature, and now they're kind of just these awkwardly shaped and slightly too small little loose item boxes that don't quite do the job. I definitely think they could have thought that through a little bit better. They don't quite work as well as they were designed to. The train itself, it looks nice. It looks very sleek, themed to the Batmobile, obviously, the more modern kind of Batmobile design. I think it looks really good. I like the gray against the pink track or the magenta track. It's very, it's that nice contrast of that very vibrant color with that matte gray. I think that works very well. The train design, they are, again, the same as Steel Taipans, the basic mark trains that you find on their thrill coasters, like their hypers and their launch coasters. Comfortable lap bars. Movie World, like Dream World, have opted for the inclusion of the additional seat belt. That does slow things down a little bit, but it doesn't affect comfort. You should still be quite fine in terms of comfort. Talking a little bit about operations. Operations on DC Rivals are typically quite slow. There's been a few historical issues, particularly as the ride has gotten on a little bit in age. One of those notable issues being that Movie World has a strong preference to operate with one train ops. Now, that's sort of understandable. For those who are not locals, what you need to understand about these parks, particularly on the Gold Coast in Australia, is that they are open 364 days of the year, like every day except for Christmas Day. So they will go down for their periodic maintenance outside of peak periods, and they'll just be closed. And if you were to go to the park during that period, the ride would just be closed. You wouldn't be able to ride it. So they kind of have to do whatever they can to make sure that window is as short as possible. Because, ideally you wouldn't have to have that window at all, but since the park is open 364 days a year, you've got to have a window of some description. But one of the things that parks will often do to try to reduce that period of time is that they will run train maintenance while the ride is still open by simply running on one train ops and then having the other train off in the maintenance shed, receiving its annual maintenance and any kind of work that it needs. And then they'll swap it out at some point, swap over and do the other train. Movie World historically have pretty much seen it fit to, whenever you're outside the peak period, just take one of the trains off and get started on that work straight away. And unfortunately, sometimes that has even overflowed into the peak periods, where the ride will have a ludicrously long queue and still be on one train. And that's just outrageous. There's no excuse for that as far as I'm concerned. You know, if you're going to be doing that, running on one train op so that you can maintain the other train, you should be maintaining it for those peak periods. That's what you're doing it for. So really, there's no excuse not to have it on there. In terms of the operations themselves, though, whether you're on one train or two, they have a lot of kind of redundant procedures that get in the way of operating it effectively. Things like they will not open the air gates until every last passenger from the previous train has left the exit platform, which is not needed in this case. It's quite a wide platform. No one's getting in each other's way. There's other things like, you know, the seatbelts have to be done by the attendant. They're very rigorous when it comes to their safety procedures, VRTP, and sometimes that does get in the way. Recently, I've found they've improved. The operations that I saw in January this year compared to October this year, vastly better in October. So, you know, I'm hoping that that's a trend. I'm hoping it's an upward trend. Let's talk about the ride itself now. So you will dispatch, turn slightly to the right, and ascend the chain lift up to the maximum height of 62 or almost 62 meters. The first drop is a vertical drop that twists 90 degrees to the right. And this is a fantastic way to start the ride. Vertical drops, always excellent, because you get, especially in the back rows, just whipped out of your seat. Pure ejector airtime as you get dragged over the top. But that twist is excellent as well because it gives it this extra force. You've got that weightlessness and that airtime of the drop itself, but as you twist, you get this lateral force that yanks you around to the right as well, and that really adds to that out of control feeling alongside that airtime. You pull out really strong positives in that first valley, and then you pull out into a large camelback. I've always found this has quite sustained airtime. It's not the strongest airtime on the ride, but it's very sustained and nice. A nice long moment as you go all the way over the top of the wide kind of crest to that hill. You'll pull out into another strong valley, and then this is where you enter the ride's signature element, the non-inverting loop. This is one of the highlights of the ride. It is one of my favorite elements on any ride, actually. It's very different in the front compared to the back. So in the front, going into the non-inverting loop, you carry all this speed into the loop. So you kind of just get rocketed upwards. You get a blast of ejector airtime as you crest over the top, and then you kind of twist and then dive out of it. But in the back and in the backward seats, it's the opposite. You get dragged up into it and the train has already lost speed by the time you start twisting, but then it picks up speed and you get dragged through that twist and ejected out on the way back down. It's so powerful and definitely one of my favorite elements from Mark or from any coaster in general. Then you'll go into the next element, which is a Stengel dive, which turns around to the right. This is the one complete dead spot on this ride. It has trims on it. I'm not sure if those trims are the reason for the fact that this element is quite dead, but it doesn't do anything for me. It just turns and continues on your way. There's no lateral force or anything here. You'll then dive out into the turnaround element. I'm not quite sure what the specific name for this turnaround is, but the turnaround is, I think, one of the most underrated moments on the ride. You get good airtime kind of over the top of it, and then it dives. It's almost like an incline dive loop, I guess. Maybe did I just think of that live here? Is it an incline dive loop? It kind of dives then down to the left, and you get nice solid positives in the pull out there. And that's where DC Rivals switches focus kind of from these big towering elements with a lot of airtime, to the second part of the ride, which is very lateral heavy, very lateral transition focused. So you get these rapid back and forth, left and right transitions, very, kind of what I imagine Pantherian to be like, these very quick transitions from left to right. And then you transition into a helix. Now, I've heard many people describe this as DC Rival's second dead spot. I vehemently disagree. Particularly recently, actually. I've had some rides in the past where I can see what they mean, but I think every time I've ridden it recently, this helix has been really good. It's very powerful. It'll give you a grey out if you're riding it on a good day. It is absolutely fantastic, and I think that maybe some people have gotten bad rides, and that's what their entire opinion is based on, because that's the only time I've been on it. But I think the helix is definitely far from a dead spot. You then get another kind of S-bend moment, another couple of rapid whippy transitions, and then you head into the finale of the ride, which is a series of 4 bunny hills on the way back to the final breaks. And these are the most powerful airtime in the entire country. You will not experience anything like, particularly Bunny Hill 1 and 2. They are... this ride tries to launch you to space. It just tosses you out of your seat. Absolutely pure, unadulterated, beautiful ejector airtime. It's fantastic because it doesn't vary by seat. It is just as good in the front as it is in the back. You will absolutely love it. Brilliant ejector airtime. Those 4 bunny hills twist around to the left and lead you into the final breaks. Overall, it's a good, lengthy ride, very well paced. Like I said, the one dead spot for me is the Stangle Dive. That element has never done anything for me at all. But other than that, the ride is brilliantly paced and full of force all the way through. Now, of course, we have to mention that for an upcharge, you can also ride this coaster backwards, much like the spinning seats that we spoke about with Steel Taipan last week. Now, unlike Steel Taipan, DC Rivals, it doesn't need an upcharge in order to be considered brilliant. It's brilliant on its own, but those backwards seats are incredible as well. I highly recommend giving them a try, particularly for the first drop and the Stangle Dive. The first drop backwards is terrifying. I can't put it any other way. It's terrifying because not only are you in the back where you're going to get the maximum amount of airtime as you're pulled over the top of the lift hill, but you're doing that backwards. You spend that entire time out of your seat being dragged along by the lap bar. And then, as I mentioned with the non-inverting loop as well, another great moment, by the way, in the backward seats is those final bunny hills as well. Absolutely fantastic in the backward seats. But yeah, with the non-inverting loop, you get dragged out of it, and kind of a similar moment to what it's like with the first drop. It's made all the more intense by the fact that you are backwards and out of your seat being dragged by the lap bar. So the inclusion of the backward seats is a nice cherry on top of this coaster. It really just gives it that something extra to make it not just a fantastic hypercoaster, which it already is, but this brilliant coaster experience that should be on your bucket list. 100% should be on your bucket list, no matter where you're from in the world. You really have to experience what it's like to ride DC Rivals backwards. So, overall reflection, overall opinion on DC Rivals. We started out this video asking the question, how does it stack up against its competitors in the debate as to what the best coaster is in Australia? And I think that the way that I would answer that is that you need to look at what happened upon this coaster's opening. This took us up a notch. Really took us up a notch in the world of roller coasters. I would say previously, if you imagine that you're an American coaster enthusiast or a British coaster enthusiast or a European or Japanese or whatever, where if you're coming from anywhere else in the world, Australia pre-DC Rivals had some interesting credits. Superman Escape's pretty damn good, but it's a long way to go for one short intimate accelerator. There would have been some stuff that enthusiasts would have come here and found interesting, but there probably wouldn't have been anything that was going to do particularly well in their rankings. There wasn't anything that was going to be like, oh yeah, I went to Australia and this coaster is in my top 10 now. DC Rivals changed that. We have a world-class coaster. We have a coaster that even an American could feasibly come here and say, that's my number one, or that's in my top 5, or that's one of my favorite coasters I've ever been on. We really have a coaster that would be just as well regarded if it was in the United States, or if it was in Europe or anywhere else. And I think that in terms of its competition here in Australia, there's very few others that we could say that about. Superman Escape, love it to death, but if you put it in America, it would be one of the weaker accelerators and it would not be that well regarded. Steel Taipan, love it to death, but it's a Blue Fire clone. They're a dime a dozen. And then the other one, of course, being Leviathan. Gravity groups are kind of everywhere. I think it would still be considered one of the better gravity groups, maybe short of like the Voyage, and a couple of others maybe, like Hades, but it would be considered one of the better ones, but I still think you'd be talking about, top 50, not top 10, for somebody who has a very significant credit count. So DC Rivals for me changed Australian coasters, and it's still the coaster that keeps us on the map. The backwards seats gimmick makes it stand out. It is a gimmick at the end of the day. It's now been done again since. It's being done all over the world now. But actually, DC Rivals, you might not remember this. This was the trendsetter. This was the one that started all of that. This was the first one that Mark did, and then Mark started offering that on other rides, and they've done the spinning seats on Steel Taipan, and then like Icon over at Blackpool Pleasure Beach, and that sort of thing. And backwards seats started to become a thing with the Gravity Group as well, and a few others. But DC Rivals was the trendsetter there, and it's a great gimmick that made it stand out, and I think it really, really worked for them. In terms of airtime overall, Rivals is absolutely elite. It's the most forceful coaster in the country, and it is it's brilliant. It's the number one in Australia, and to me, that's not even a debate. It still stacks up really, really well in terms of smoothness and comfort. It's approaching 10 years old already, which is just mind-blowing to me, but it's still very, very smooth and doing great. And if operations were better, I don't think I would have very much to criticize about this coaster. Really, it's the one dead spot, the lack of theming, and the poor operations. Really, other than that, it's perfect. Before we dive into the final verdict, let's talk about ride restrictions. DC Rivals has a minimum height restriction of 130 centimeters. There is no maximum height limit. There is also a minimum age limit of 7. This is reasonably accessible for a ride of this scale. As I mentioned with Steel Taipan, the Mark lap bars can be a little bit difficult if you are larger around the waist or have large thighs. It does need to staple kind of downwards onto you in order to secure you, so it can be a little bit difficult for you to reach the minimum limit if you are slightly larger. Movie World does warn that riders must be able to appropriately utilize the restraint systems in order to ride, so make sure you're prepared. There is a test seat which is available at the ride entrance where the queues separate from the general queue and the fast track, single rider, and backwards queues. This ride is not suitable for guests who have had recent surgery or illness, have neck or back disorders, have pre-existing limb injuries, are pregnant, have heart disorders, high blood pressure or pacemakers, are under the influence of alcohol or medications, or are susceptible to seizures or epilepsy, and it is not recommended for guests susceptible to motion sickness or vertigo. Guests must be able to absorb sudden and dramatic movements and should be able to descend stairs and ladders independently or with the assistance of a carer in the event of an evacuation. If there's going to be an evacuation from DC Rivals, there are 2 main places that you could be evacuated from, which are the final breaks. If that were to happen, it's a fairly small walk down a catwalk, and then you'll probably descend a ladder or staircase. But obviously the point of more concern would be the lift hill. The lift hill does stand over 60 meters tall, and you would be required to descend with the assistance of Movie World staff down stairs all the way to the bottom, which could, potentially be 60 meters. So really assess your ability to do that, because there is a chance that you will be required to evacuate the ride, and you will need to be able to descend those stairs in that case. In order to ride, guests will need to remove all prosthetic limbs and must have at least one natural upper limb with the ability to brace, and at least 2 natural lower limbs that extend past the ankle. The good news for parents and those who are carers as well, DC Rivals is equipped with parent swap, single rider queue, and accessible entry for you to take advantage of if they are going to assist you on the day. As always, any rider on a roller coaster should be able to independently maintain an upright seated position and support their head and neck for the duration of the ride, and be able to transfer into the seat either independently or with the assistance of a carer, not a staff member. In terms of accessibility, DC Rivals, pretty state-of-the-art. I would say very accommodating for a coaster of this scale. Please just make sure that you are up to date with that safety information. If you have any doubts, please see Movie World's Guest Services Center, which is located on Main Street. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the final verdict. I deem DC Rivals Hypercoaster to be an S-tier coaster. This ride took Australian coasters to the next level. It has an ambitious and masterful custom layout that demonstrates how good Mark are at ejector airtime, punchy transitions, and creative flowing layouts. Combined with its backwards seats, which are a truly insane experience, it stands as definitely the flagship coaster of the entire country at this stage. And with that, DC Rivals enters our world roller coaster rankings at number 1, ahead of Steel Type N. Join me next week for the next review. I've been Maloney's Coasters. Click the like and subscribe buttons and leave a comment to help out against the YouTube algorithm, and I'll see you later in the week. Happy Tuesday, everybody.